Hey, hello everybody. No mai, haere mai, ko Joy Keene, toko ingoa. Ko o te rangatira, te ropu waihanga kimu o Aotearoa. Hello and welcome. My name is Joy Keene. I'm the Executive Director at New Zealand Game Developers Association, and I'm very happy today to be talking to Tomas. A little bit of housekeeping before we get going. This is being recorded, so if you do not want your face to appear on camera or your name to appear in any transcripts, please keep your camera off, and you can change your name, doesn't worry me. And we will be doing a Q&A at the end with Tomas, and just pop your questions into the chat box during the presentation, and I'll read all of those out at the end of Tomas's presentation. So over to you, Tomas.
Thank you. I can't see who's on the call, right? I only see you.
You can only see me, yes, because everybody else has got the camera off.
Okay, understood. Okay. Well, if you can accept being recorded, please turn your camera on so I can see you. Hello. I'm Tomas. I'm live from a very rainy, very rainy Sydney. Cold and awful. Thank you for arranging this, and thanks to all the participants. I hope you will have lots of questions towards the end. So, now we're back to that thing I can't change. Here we go. So I run a small corporate finance advisory firm. I'm based in Sydney, like I said. We advise game developers, studios on mergers and acquisitions and raising capital. We do both buy-side and sell-side advisory. So typically we work for the studios, but we can also advise investors or buyers who are looking to invest in New Zealand or Australia. The firm is small. It's me and my associate Nicola, who is based in Frankfurt. We've been going since 2020. We've done a few transactions. They were all in Australia, and I would love to do something in New Zealand, but it hasn't happened yet. I think, and you may have heard of them, Blowfish Studios, Wicked Witch, and Grease Monkey Games, all sold. Full 100% divestments. New for this year for us is that we're also launching a venture fund specifically for gaming in New Zealand and Australia. So I guess most of you know Hillfriends and Alt Ventures. So this will be a version of them. Yes, so I'm going to talk to you about negotiations today. I've done M&A and joint venture negotiations in many different places and for different clients, but also as an in-house advisor to a company called Ericsson, a network equipment supplier in Sweden. I forgot to say I'm Swedish. That's why I have the northern lights behind me. And I actually started on a list. I've done M&A deals in Sweden, UK, Netherlands, France, Germany, Denmark, Thailand, China, Australia, the US, Canada, Singapore, Indonesia, South Korea, and I probably forgot a few. But this is, and unfortunately, like I said, not New Zealand, but hopefully that's coming. But it's interesting because when you do this and you have had the opportunity to do it in many different places, you understand that negotiation can actually be different in different places. Okay, so I have a few slides. I'll take you through this. This is an introduction to negotiation. It won't go into it's not the deepest, psychology talk. But it will give you some food for thought and hopefully something to think about if you do end up in a negotiation situation. This is me negotiating with Microsoft. I wasn't getting anywhere, and one of the super senior guys came to New York, and he said exactly what's on the screen here. And what he was effectively saying is, be patient, look for other options. There is a solution. Okay, this is the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about what negotiation is, some strategies, keys to successful negotiation, including, your preparation. I'll talk about how you tailor your message and your conversation to different counterparties, some things not to do, and then I will talk about whether you need an advisor or not. Okay, so negotiation is, well, if you think about it, it's pretty much every day, can be anything. You can negotiate with your kids. They're typically very good at it, getting what they want if you have kids. It can also be with friends, deciding which restaurant to go to. But it can also be more business, like Gamescom. And I'm guessing some of you may be preparing for Gamescom. And you may want to talk to publishers, for example, at Gamescom. And when you do, it's good to be prepared. But you also have more everyday business situations, employees or employers, suppliers, customers, and then also in the field that I'm in, venture capital, financial investors, and potentially acquirers. This is also an interesting one. This is another quote. We were negotiating to acquire a software for telecom operators to manage their clients, and this is and the business that had developed this software, and this was my instruction from the bosses. Keep telling them how fantastic their business is, then hit them with a really low offer. It's a strategy to have mixed messages. I'm not sure if this works, but I had to follow the instructions from the boss. We ended up acquiring the business, and the CEO is still a very good friend of mine. Okay, so 5 different strategies. And they can all be good. I think some of them better than others, but it will definitely depend on the situation. So there's an accommodating negotiation strategy, basically saying yes, trying to work it out, trying to be helpful, trying to do whatever you can to give your counterparty what they want. I wouldn't recommend it if you have a good position when you start the negotiations. But if you are negotiating from a disadvantage, it can work. One thing to keep in mind, though, if you're too accommodating and you're negotiating with someone who you will be working with in the future, they will remember this, even if they gain from it immediately, but they might see you as too accommodating. Avoiding is also a strategy to avoid difficult topics. For example, classic is to avoid the topic of valuation. If you're selling your business and you talk about all the other stuff, but not that one, I don't think this is the best strategy. It's quite culturally dependent. In Sweden, you would go straight to the point and discuss the most important thing first, whereas in other cultures, you may want to talk about softer things and less contentious topics before you go into things like valuation. Collaborating, I would say, is the most common one. It's the one I would generally recommend. This is about both parties winning, finding solutions, very much about understanding what is important to the other side. And remember, this can be so many other things than what's on the table. They could have a strategy, a long-term strategy for New Zealand or for this region, which can be much bigger than, you know, the current deal on the table. So asking questions and finding out what's important to them can help you find things to create win-win situations. You can also compete, and this is if you do a one topic per at a time, it is always going to be I win, you lose. I think you can do this, and if you're good at it, and if you're, you know, assertive enough, you can have short-term gains, but it's not the proper way to build a long-term relationship. Compromising it is quite common, where you say, "Oh, I'll give you this if you give me this," or "I'll give you this if you give me that." But it only works if everybody's fine with a middle way, which, if you go back to the collaborating example, is not always the case, because your counterparties may very well be willing to give up things that are currently not on the table that you may be interested in. So I would say the collaborating strategy is better than compromising, but it's very common. So this is me negotiating to acquire a really large what's it called? This is a post-production facility in the screen industry. And this was a situation where we were a negotiating team. There was 4 of us, and we were waiting for a reply. This was live, so we were in a hotel. And we agreed that if they came back to the room and didn't give us what we want, we would all react pretty strongly. And we did. And the most senior negotiator on our team, he said, "What's on the screen here?" And this actually worked. So the other team, they were shocked by our reaction. They went back out and came back 10 minutes later with a much better proposal. Okay, some keys. These are mostly tailored to the collaborating style or strategy. You want to create mutual benefit. You want to seek win-win solutions. Again, this is based, you know, the question of, if you ask your counterparty, why is this important to you? How does this support your strategy? What are you trying to achieve? That's very, very powerful, and will give you information to help solve tricky negotiation situations. Preparation's very, very important. You need to know what they want and why. And you also need to know what is your best alternative to reaching an agreement with this counterparty. What will happen to your business or your whatever the situation is if you cannot reach an agreement? And you need to keep that in mind, because that's what's going to happen if you cannot agree. Communication we spoke about. Obviously, it's all about communication, I would say. It's different now. 2 of the companies that I showed on the first slide, they were actually sold without the parties ever meeting. So it's very, very different. Typically, I'm more old school, and people meet and discuss and get to know each other. I think it's easier, but it can absolutely be done, you know, through Zoom or other online platforms. Flexibility and creativity. Yes, I mean, it's about finding a solution and coming to an agreement. I think my main point here is try to not isolate single topics, because then you always end up with a compromising solution, and that's not what you want. So if you're talking about valuation, for example, what's the value of, how much will you sell your business for, or what's your new salary, or whatever situation may be. Think about this as one of several topics, because otherwise you end up in a situation where somebody's going to have to give, unless you are both in agreement on what the exact fair middle of the road number is. So I would always suggest that you think about valuation in the context of, yes, but when will the payments be made? How much can we get upfront? How much will be the earnout? And try to have a more structured discussion around multiple topics at the same time. I think it's better not just for us in this group. I think it's better for the counterparties as well. Relationship building, very important. You know, like I said before, you could be negotiating with a future employer or a current employer or a future owner of the business or a future venture capitalist who's invested and is going to sit on your board. So relationships, very, very important. Sorry. Yes, preparation. I spoke about this a little bit before. When you go into a discussion in my world, so M&A and venture capital, you definitely want to know some things about yourself. Not just because, you know, if you're talking, say, valuation, for example, you want to know what your revenue and EBITDA is, because that's going to be, could be the base for your valuation. But it's also very good to come across as, you know, being 100% on top of your numbers and your business and your balance sheet and your P&L. And there's a few other topics here that you obviously know. But also, when you come into this type of discussion, you know, what are you expecting to gain from this? Is it only money, which is quite rare? Could it be new relationships internationally? Could it be someone to support you through a strategic role in your company? And then this is the second, the next bullet point is very much about venture capital investments. So how much do you need and how will you use the funds? It's not 2021 anymore, where money is flying around and you didn't have to give very much reason for why you needed it. These days now, it's very different. How will you use the money? It's very important. And then there's a few other things that you need to be prepared. This is, like I said, quite tailored to the VC situation. Last bullet point is important. How much time do you have? It's a very good question. Some people sometimes ask it in meetings. It's great because if you're short on time yourself, you want to share that with your counterparty. You don't want to be the only one who needs to rush off to a flight or a bus or something. It's much better if you share that time pressure between you. So here's a few words about your counterparties. So the point of this slide is you really need to think about who you're talking to and tailor what you say and what you present to that other party. If you want to raise money or divest your business or something similar, the party on the other side, they all have different incentives. So I'm pretty sure you're very familiar how publishers work, much better than I am, for sure. But this is, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for good games to publish, to help you and market and do QA and localization and whatever else they do. And they obviously want to recoup their investment. Sometimes they want sequel rights and so on. But that conversation's very, very different from if you're talking to a venture capitalist. Venture capitalists, I mean, it's all about money for all three of these, but for them, it's very much more an open, it's an open topic for them. They invest money in studios or companies, and they expect a certain return within a certain time frame. They have investors themselves into the funds. They all say, and we do the same, like, we will help you. We will help you grow. We will help you solve your next funding round, or we will support you if you have consolidation issues in your balance sheet, if we can. But this all aims to building value and making sure that there's an exit at the end of the term. This doesn't mean at all that venture capital is bad, because it's not. It's really good, but you need to know when you're talking to them what they want to hear. Then strategic investors, and I think this is the one that I've seen the most times, where people have misunderstood their incentives. So most strategic investors they don't really care if they invest $2 million and 3 years later it's worth $6 million or $8 million. That's not the point. That's not why they are investing. They are investing long term to get for strategic reasons, to get a foothold in New Zealand, for example, to have a company there, to get insight into your development strategies, your strategies for monetization. They could be looking for synergies with other companies that they have invested in, or that they could own 100% of. And they can also invest minority tickets to get access to a future full acquisition if the studio develops the way they expect it to. So very, very different. Moving on. This is me. This is me in China. This was in a room. It was just me. I traveled from Sweden to a negotiation and to acquire a business. And I got to the hotel, walked into the meeting room. There was 11 people seated around the table, and just me from Sweden. And after a very, very long discussion, I honestly think I may have gone a bit straight to the point, but this was the reply, because I offered something that we were willing to pay for the business, and then this is what I got back. And then the other 10 people around the room started each giving me the reasons why it was worth so much more. The founder of this business is still a very good friend of mine, also in Hong Kong. We ended up buying that business, by the way. It was not my number, and it was not his number, I can tell you. Some things to avoid. Don't get angry, don't swear, don't cry, don't leave the room. It's not going to help. Try and be composed. I've had things thrown at me across the room at a very prestigious law firm in Paris. A binder came flying when we said something we probably shouldn't have. It's not a good way. It's not going to help. You can be passionate, if you have a business or something that you are passionate about, but don't throw binders. It's not going to help. Like I said before, avoid single topic negotiations. Think more topics at the same time, bigger picture, because that will lead to alternative solutions. Be honest, don't upset people. It will, M&A processes, VC investment processes, they tend to discover the truth through due diligence or through the relationship. So don't hide things. Don't rush. I mentioned this. And don't over strategize. You can go in, be well prepared, but you don't need to think through, it's not chess. 100 different scenarios. But if they say this, I'm going to say that. If they say this, I'm going to change everything. But just go in, be well prepared. Don't over strategize. Don't say to yourself, and this is quite common, they are so big, this investment is nothing to them. They should just give us 2 million. Doesn't matter. 3 million. They have 300, 400 billion maybe. That's not how it works. It doesn't matter if it's 500,000 or 500 million. The people you are dealing with want to do a good job, and their job is to do the investment or acquire or offer you a raise, whatever it is, that is reasonable and fair. That's going to be their perspective. And then last, I already mentioned this, that's boring. This is from my meeting in Hong Kong. Okay. Now this is good. This is from my mentor. He heard me on the phone being very upset with someone I was negotiating with, and he said this, and this is very, very true. Because what you want in the end is for someone to say yes and say, I believe this is good. I believe in you. I trust you. I think we've found a good solution. So yes. And they are much more likely to do that to someone they like. Oh, yeah, I have to say this because I'm a financial advisor, so it wouldn't be fair if I didn't comment on this. Do you need a financial advisor to do an M&A deal or accept an investment into your company or studio? It depends on the situation. If you've done this before and you have time to do it, and you're comfortable, you don't. If the person you are talking to, the counterparty, if that's just a person, it could be an angel investor, a friend, or someone, you probably don't. But if your counterparty is advised by Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, you probably need someone to sit next to you and help you. There's also other things. If you do work with an advisor, you will be exposed to all the relationships of that advisor, which can be beneficial when you're building an M&A or VC case, but also as leverage. You remember I talked about having multiple options and knowing what your option to a negotiated solution is, and having more relationships actually gives you more options. A lot of my clients they say, oh, can you help me sell my business? And I say, well, not really, but I can give you some very good options and help you navigate them for you to sell your business. It's a bit different. Yes. And, if you do what you want to know before you go into these discussions, and if you didn't know it, you may not need help. What's your valuation? What can you expect? And what's the kind of structure that you would be looking for in a deal? Very few deals in the gaming space are done by a full cash payment upfront. And that obviously, that's why you see many earnout deals in this industry because it's hit driven to some extent, and founders tend to put a lot more value on the future IP than the investors. Obviously, advisors cost money. If you don't want to spend that, you shouldn't, if you're comfortable with all the rest. What I would like to say, though, if you don't have, whether you do or don't have a financial advisor, you want to have a very good lawyer. You're not going to get away from that. Final slide. I'm just checking my watch. Oh, we still have some time. Be yourself, invest in preparation, super important. Know your other options. It's good to have options when you go into these discussions. And also don't forget that you are likely negotiating with future partners. This could be, New Zealand, Australia communities are not that big. If you're talking to someone locally, you are very, very likely to talk to them again in the future. But this also goes for if you're talking to someone overseas. You're likely to run into them again in some way or form. And then last, be aware of and respectful of cultural differences. It is very different to have a counterparty with a Chinese cultural background to that from, me, Swedish, or someone from North America. Very different. I think that was my last slide. Oh, hand up. Thank you.
It's all right to just ask questions here directly and not in the chat.
Absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Hi, Thomas. I'm Anna. Thank you very much. I've taken 4 pages of notes already off of that.
That's
so
good.
Fantastic. Can you just maybe give us a little bit more detail on cross-cultural negotiation, like what we might expect going to the States versus going to Tokyo Game Show, or, the different people that we might meet? What should be our heads up?
Oh, that's a very good question. So if you talk to someone like me, Swedish people, and I've made that mistake here in Australia. Swedish people too direct, much too direct. I think Swedish. Let's just do Nordic. Let's say Nordic, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. Very direct. They will tell you what they want and how much they are willing to pay, or how much they're willing to sell for. It's the Swedish style. And if you say something, if you present something, an idea that they don't like, they might actually say that straight to you. Say, we don't like this. Dutch people will be very much the same. German to some extent. US, well, the US, they're not as direct. But they have the strategy of talking for a long time. So in negotiation, well, it's my experience. If they have something to say and they think it may not be what you want to hear, it'll take them 5 minutes to say it. What else? I've never been to Japan, unfortunately. I wish I had. I've done one. It was part of a very big deal in South Korea. That's the closest I got. Much more careful, much more strategizing. But all my experience though is that all cultures are, honest, but it's just a different way of saying things. I would say my experience with China and South Korea is that they, on average, you shouldn't generalize, but they have much more patience. Much more patience. I would say North America would be, if you don't want this, let us know, we'll just walk away. And they would actually mean it. I'd say it would take a bit longer in Asia. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to talk about individual countries, but I'm looking at my list now. Yeah. You also know that some cultures you don't really want to say no. You find other ways of saying no, which is something you need to be aware of. Took me, as a Swedish person, took me a long time to understand. Australia is much more like that than Sweden, much more. People don't really want to say no. I don't like this, or no, this is not a deal for us, but thank you. It would be much more like, let me think about it, but in the meantime, I'll introduce you to a friend who could be interested in this. If you've heard that sometime. Yeah, so I hope that answered your question. If you want to,
yeah,
we can talk about this for hours probably, but offline.
I think you're probably accurate. I think New Zealand would probably bump in with Australia there, that we don't like saying no. We tend to talk around things and politely change the subject instead.
Yeah. I was amazed when I came to Australia 7 years ago, and I was looking for work, and everybody was so helpful. They said, "Can I work here?" Well, let me introduce you to this guy. And I just ended up having so much coffee, but I never really felt that I was getting anywhere. It took me a while to realize. More questions?
I
might ask something quickly, but
you go.
You go.
Oh, hi, Wade.
Okay.
Hi.
How's it going?
We might have a
yeah.
similar question.
Oh, you go first.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Thomas. I was just wondering, for the smaller studios, like, what's your view about how you can help them create leverage when they're trying to negotiate with, a fairly large global publisher?
In a publishing situation,
in the publishing situation, rather than maybe the VC space so much.
No, I understand. I think, be well prepared, but I do think having more than one discussion going on at the same time is the best. It's going to help you the most. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy to find, especially it's not 2021, like I said, anymore. It is harder. Are you mobile or PC console?
Oh, I'm actually a lawyer. I'm just intrigued about how you go about helping these studios. Yeah. So I'm not actually a studio. Yeah.
Okay. Now, especially, I was going to say, especially in the mobile space.
Yes. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But I would say yes. Having more than one discussion going on at the same time, and even if if you're talking to someone, and you probably know this, if you're talking to a publisher and you're getting closer, you feel, don't wait with reaching out to the second, third, or fourth, or fifth publisher at the same time, because even if you don't get proper traction immediately with the second publisher, it will actually help you with your confidence when you go and talk to the first one.
Absolutely.
Just to know, well, I'm also talking to.
It's always helpful to throw a few names around.
Yeah.
Create that
like
sense
real
of
estate
competition.
agents always do to you when you're buying a house.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Wade.
No, I was going to kind of ask a similar question, I guess, around that. Probably just to reassure people that you can negotiate, and especially with publishing agreements, certainly none I've seen, we've always pushed back on one or two things or sought to clarify things. And I think that's good. I think it's easy to kind of go, oh, well, I'm just a small Kiwi dev and look, it's really hard market. I've just got to take what I can get. And I think the answer is no. And I guess from your point of view, in any of your deals, have you ever had something where, it was literally take it or leave it? And they said, oh, no, but we want to change this. And you said that and walked away. Or is it really that's only for, insolvency type situations where things are really, really bad?
It has happened, but before I reply properly, I'm just going to say I normally don't assist clients with publishing. I forgot to say that in the beginning. I've tried, but it's a different set of relationships that you need for publishing deals, and the relationships I have are more on M&A strategy. I think negotiation strategies, some of them at least, will apply to the publishing area as well. No, but you're absolutely right. And this is all about knowing what your option is. If the publishing deal and the only one you're talking to is that one publisher, and that's the only thing that can save your studio, I mean, by all means, don't say yes to everything. That's not going to help, and it's going to make you look unusual. And you can negotiate, and you're absolutely right. And you should. Very, very rarely, just if you've come that far, you're actually negotiating, you're talking about terms. It's very, very unusual for a publisher or a studio to just walk away. I've seen it happen, not in this industry, more in the telco space, where people actually walk away and don't come back. But typically, it has to do with there's something else that's wrong. It's not that individual valuation or individual term. There's something else. There's probably something wrong with the strategy, I would say. But yeah, no, you made a good point. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Oh, Wade, sorry. Sorry for turning my camera off. I had to go change a nappy, so I didn't think that anyone really wanted to see that. So
you can't negotiate that. You just have to do it.
Yeah, no, you just have to do it. Exactly. Cool. No, thank you. That's I think the only main question I had. It's yeah, I think it's always worth pushing back and making sure you understand the deals, whether it's a publisher or a VC or whatever. And I mean, certainly around VC, really understanding, who it is you're dealing with and what they want out of it. And especially with games where, we're still in a relatively early stage. So it can be sometimes, it's more up in the air than with more, I guess, traditional tech businesses. You're working towards this $100 million sale and that sort of thing. Whereas with the game, you kind of go, well, is it one game or two game or 5 games? What do you actually expect? There's a whole lot more room for differences of opinion. So I'm quite interested to see with you coming in as a VC how that kind of what that looks like for some of the studios we act for. So
so am I. We'll see. Now we're raising money at the moment for the fund. We do have a strategy for what the investments will look like, but you're absolutely right. This is something we talk about a lot. It is a hit-driven business, and venture investments. You don't have the luxury of investing in studios that have 5, 6, well-performing IPs going at the same time as a base. It's much more common being, the first game or maybe the second game. So the risk is so much higher. So yeah, it's a good point.
Excellent. Is there any other questions? can either pop them in the chat. Jevon, I agree with you. New Zealand is all about the coffee in our meetings, absolutely. Or just feel free to put your hand up or speak. I'm sure Tomas has got a lot of wealth of knowledge there that we can be using.
When you're thinking about your questions, I can also say, please send me an email or call me if there's anything else you want to discuss. I will be back in I was in New Zealand a few weeks ago, and I obviously didn't meet all studios, but I met a lot of studios. But I will be back in October for the NZGDC. So if you want to catch up there, that would be great. But hopefully I'll be there before.
I have one question that popped into my mind. As a gaming studio that might be pre-revenue, do you have any tips on valuations that are more appropriate for a gaming studio than, say, a normal startup or business? Things that have worked or haven't worked in terms of calculating valuations?
So I haven't divested any pre-game studios, and this is the $100 million question. Not saying that you're worth 100 million, but it's very, very hard, very hard. And VCs typically look in that situation, obviously at your business plan, the genre, your analysis of how you're going to monetize your game, number of followers, Facebook, Discord, whatever you've been able to put together. But I think the thing that they will look at the most will be you and your team. And what have you done previously? There are models out there that have a fixed number. Say, if you've created a startup before, that's 500,000. If you have a business plan, that's 500,000. If you have things like that, and then they come to a value, but that's I don't know about if that really works. So sorry, I don't really have an answer.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen so far, but are mostly for startups, and that's like the cost of the trademark and
Yes.
the cost, like the value of the IP that you've accumulated, but those are very specific to startups.
Yes, and how many hours of code
Yeah,
you put together. It's very, very hard.
Yeah. I know it's a hard question.
No, it is a hard question. And if I were you, I would base most of the conversations on the prospects of your game, because that's probably where you can find the most value, and then prepare enough to be able to convince people that your analysis, your market, the willingness of the consumers to spend on your game is correct. But no, it's hard.
Thank you.
It's a great question, Jevon. Thank you.
It is a good question, and it is the earn-out situation. Even when you're divesting a more established studio, it's not hard. Well, to calculate what the value is of the studio as it is today with the current games in market, because all the future cash flows you can discount, and you can get a valuation. But then for the coming game or coming games, that is exactly the same situation. That's where the earn-out models come into play, and that's why they're so common in this industry, because you don't really want to pay for something until you see that coming true.
Excellent. Thanks, Tomas.